Hey everybody, I am Ryan Mauro. Welcome to the Counteroffensive. This week we're going to be looking at the topic of another avenue for the Russian influence operations that we kind of led into 2 weeks ago. So 2 weeks ago, for those of you that missed it, the title of the episode was Candace Owens, Iran's Weapon of Mass Dysfunction. And aside from the fact that it sounded cool, there was a point to it. There is a strategy on the part of the Iranian regime in Russia to amplify her. We know this, we can prove it. And the idea is to basically make American civil society toxic, among other things. And what that led up to is, well, basically, I'll give away the headline. We showed, for the first time, we discovered an Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps operation, semi-covert. I say semi because it is covert, but it was kind of easy to find if you follow the trails, to really amplify her, but push certain propaganda themes that link up with Russia's czarist Christianity I've been talking about. We discovered and showed how the Russian and Iranian operations, specifically for that, even involve the same staff. So it's not even just allies, like it's literally one thing. Even the U.S. and England, like what do? We have allies that work together very closely, but we're not the same. We don't share staff. They share staff, like Alexander Dugin, who you guys are familiar with, is also an advisor to the Iranian government. He goes to Iran for propaganda conferences to plan things. And so we showed that. But then the real kicker at the end was I showed how there is an anti-Semitic, Holocaust-denying, traditionalist Catholic, as they like to call themselves, which is different than a Catholic with traditional values. Traditional Catholic is a branding thing. It basically means, for this particular group, like more radical, tend to be more anti-Semitic, anti-Western, anti-modernity. But this individual, E. Michael Jones, I showed how he is like officially an author for one of the websites run by the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps. So he works with them. He's one of their authors. And he has been interviewed by Candace Owens and has had communication with her, and she is a fan of his. And he is known as not just a Holocaust-denying guy, but he pushes this particular type of pro-Russian Catholicism, which aligns with the Russian Orthodox Church, pro-Russian Orthodoxy, because the strategy is on the part of the Russians and the Iranians, believe it or not, is for a grand alliance between the Islamists, Sunni and Shia, especially the Iranians, obviously, and like pro-Russia and as much as possible pro-jihad, traditionalist Catholics and Orthodox Christians led by the Russian Orthodox Church. That's kind of like the big thing. So that episode we covered a lot there, but hopefully you're seeing how each episode builds on the next, and how there's no way for me to adequately show all of this, unravel it, and hopefully help people defeat it eventually, which is why I call this the counteroffensive. Unless you see from episode 1 to 2 to building up how this network operates. So this is kind of a connector from episode, I guess that would have been episode 3, and then episode 4 last week we covered Trump's speech and the declassified intelligence because it dovetailed so much with what we do. And yes, thank you for someone in the comments for reminding me. Make sure everybody you interact in the chat for me. That is a gift. That's a donation, actually. It helps with the algorithm, and it helps get this stuff out. So that's actually, if you want to help me out and you like this, that's something simple that you can do. So for this week now that I gave the background that you kind of need to know to understand this, this is titled The Farmer Factor, Candace versus Pro-Western Christianity. So we're going to now follow the evidence trail from the Iranian-Russian-linked traditionalist Catholic offensive, specifically E. Michael Jones, and let's just see where it leads. But actually, a quick news update for those of you that follow this issue. You're going to find this fascinating. I finally got blocked by Candace Owens and John Mappin. John Mappin being the senior level Scientologist, QAnon guy in London, who takes credit for launching, incredibly so, launching the British version of Turning Point. And getting Candace together with her husband. And he's openly connected to the senior levels of the Russian government and advocates for them as a lobbyist. Yes.
I just have to ask real quick, does this mean that we won't be getting him on the show?
Oh, I didn't give you that update. He never replied. I kept bugging him. He didn't even block me because of that. Here's why he blocked me. So just so people know, so the John Mappin is a Scientologist, Russian government guy. He's a lobbyist for them. He's also connected to high levels of the Chinese government, which he has bragged about, but mostly Russia. But why, after all this time, what got me blocked? What finally did it? What made them break my heart? I asked a very pointed question to both of them around the same time, and they both blocked me within hours of each other. I asked whether Candace Owens is a Scientologist, has an opinion on Scientology, or has ever practiced elements of Scientology. And the reason I did that is because thanks to people that view the show, they're pointing out to me some interesting crossovers between things that she says, even some messaging that the Russian government media has used in relation to her that oddly dovetails with how Scientologists talk. It seemed like a stretch to me. But John Mappin, the more you look into it, the closer you realize he is to Candace. And I'm sorry to say, Charlie, and I'm not criticizing her. He has bragged about they traveled with Erica Kirk as well. And that just goes to show you that the best, smartest people in the world, like these operations, if you're not fully educated about them and you have someone who does this full time on your side, they're going to get in your circle. There have been people in my circle who have fallen to it. So it happens even to me. But yeah, so they both blocked me finally, and that was the trigger, and that was so interesting to me that I zeroed in that it was that topic of everything. They're like, we gotta just block them because they know if I'm tweeting that to them, other people can see. Everything else they could deal with. That was the one thing they needed to put an end to. And what triggered it is that Mappin keeps trying to say that Charlie was a secret Scientologist. And apparently there's been other people in Scientology that have been trying to plant those seeds for a while too. And he says, well, just because Charlie was a Christian, you can also be a Scientologist. Scientologists believe you could call yourself an evangelical Christian your whole life and just hide that you're a Scientologist, and that's consistent. They can go together. Mappin has literally said he wants to be the first Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, he might even said Hindu Scientologist. They believe you can be a member of not just one other religion, but as many as you want. And so that's why it seems so weird at first that the Russian government, which means Russian intelligence, would work with the Church of Scientology that they're hostile to. And then you think about it and you're like, well, the Church of Scientology has had its own very aggressive, successful intelligence agency. And think about the adaptability there. They have a lot of wealth. They're connected in Hollywood. They're vicious. They're cult-like, so they have a mindset that is good for that. But they can adapt. You can be a Jew when you want. You can be a Christian when you want. You can be a Scientologist when you want. And if you genuinely believe in Scientology, the best thing about that is that you won't feel morally conflicted, because when you're morally conflicted, other people can oftentimes detect it. That's a vulnerability. You don't have that vulnerability when you work through the Church of Scientology. So, yeah, Alex?
Very. So, no, I just said interesting, but yeah. Oh, okay. So I just want to make sure that, we weren't going to have him on because I was really looking forward to that episode. But
have what?
I was looking forward to the episode, but I guess.
Oh, yeah. So I take it that he's not going to come on to the show. But I mean, like, seriously, what does he have to hide? Like, why would he not do it?
Well, he might have had a better opportunity to come on before you brought the Scientology stuff up.
Oh, that he was already not replying. So.
Oh man,
I thought since he loved, that's his favorite thing to talk about. Like, I thought that there was a chance it could work because it's like, all right, well, if you feel you have an obligation even to evangelize for Scientology, I'm offering you that platform. I'm not looking to debate. I'm just trying to find facts. Well, that was too scary for him. And apparently too scary for Candace because they both blocked me around the same time. Candace did go on a blocking spree around that time. She was having like a meltdown. Yeah. But still, she's had meltdowns before. It hadn't blocked me before, and it's happened at the same time as Mappin. So I think that was very, very significant. And so what I want to do is to show people that I'm not just like assuming the worst of somebody. The video file I want to show people, Alex? It's creepy.
Spoke a lot about his third eye. That's why that sentence caught my attention in the article. He spoke about the street lamps that would go off when he would run, about the special school that he had to go to. He spoke about a lot of the things that were strange in our childhood, the testing that both of us had to endure. We spoke about the fact that we could both astral project. You know all of this, of course. You have his phone. And how surprised we were when we learned that not everybody does that naturally. Sleep paralysis, you name it. We had conversations about it.
So something that she didn't announce until recently was that she and Charlie had superpowers. Now, I didn't know Charlie, but I have a feeling if he had superpowers, he probably would have used them and told people about it. I mean, at the very least, it's a pretty good fundraising pitch, right? But the only superpower I knew that Candace had was to be like super annoying. But apparently she has these other supernatural powers. But is that just her being crazy and arguably lying? I think she believes most of what she says. Or is that reflecting Mappin's influence and something deeper, that something she wouldn't want even her followers to know, like links to Scientology? Well, think about what the specific weirdness that she was just talking about, right? Oh, somebody else says in the comment section, Mappin blocked me when I asked him if he finally converted Candace to Scientology. Candace was criticizing psychologists and psychiatrists, that's like the key thing for Scientologists. Like, they hate psychiatry. So you add that, like, it's pretty clear that I'm right in saying that that's what caused it, aside from it being the last thing that I did. But if that's what's the trigger for other people, that's our sore spot, guys. That's something we need to research. All you researchers out there that do such a great job sending me information, those are some trails we need to follow. But let's look at what Scientology says about the things she described. I don't think she even knew when she said that it was going to be a tell. So she talked about astral projecting, which is where you can leave your body. Your body still operates, but you can like exit it. Well, Scientology doesn't actually call it that, but they believe in exteriorization. They rename a lot of things, like a lot of cults and a lot of groups. It's like anything they can rename, they do, because it gives you an in-group language. It's like a cultish organizing tactic. That a lot of companies do also. So yeah, that's astral projection. It's like an out-of-body experience, except you're kind of conscious and you believe that your soul can go outside your body. And that also means that you're exceptionally connected to whatever spiritual entity you as a Scientologist want to connect yourself. You could call it God or L. Ron Hubbard or whatever. And then as for a third eye, Scientology doesn't mention third eye. But like I said, they rename things. That's a very common thing in these types of fringe groups. That fits exteriorization also, that you have a conscious self that can separate from the physical body. So the fact that she even really analyzes this, the fact she mentioned those two things, she mentioned a wide range of things there, right? So she believes, and she said other things, that they had these special powers. There's a wide range she could mention. And the fact that this came together, she mentioned like third eye, astral projecting together, is actually a little bit of a tell of a Scientology influence that may not be immediately apparent, because the Scientology description of that exteriorization covers both. Right? So if you're thinking of something, if you're thinking of exteriorization, how to explain it to people, what do you say? Astral project, third eye. The ordering of words can be a tell sometimes. Yeah, I mean, it's not smoking gun proof, but it's a data point that can be useful to notice. So that's like the little news update. And then let's get back to the title of the show. So I mentioned before about how like the grand plan is for the Russian Orthodox Church to lead Orthodox Christians, especially Arab Christians, in alliance with the Mahdi, the messianic figure of the Islamic end times, that the Russian Orthodox Church and Dugin and all them believe will be Iran, but they also ally with non-Iranian Islamists. You know, Iran is Shiite, others are Sunni, like the Chechens are Sunni. So it doesn't have to be Iran, but it would have to include Iran to some degree. Iran may not have the lead. So what they're trying to put together, and I think part of their targeting of Candace and George has to do with this, is this grand alliance of the traditionalist Catholics and those that are like that, aligning with Russia and aligning with the Orthodox Christians, including the Arabs, led by the Russian Orthodox Church, and then Islamist allies, that all of which could just fall under that like Islamic apocalyptic belief. Now, something in Candace's rhetoric that I caught a while ago, before I was even aware of this in detail, to realize that this is actually like a plan, but this is something that really was so interesting to me. A demonic hitchhiker, if anybody saw it, that's interesting. Alex, let's go to that X post if we could, and let's enlarge that for people. So this is October 7th, 2025. So not that long ago. So this kind of correlates with the heightening of her parroting of Russia's lines, particularly these particular lines that people wouldn't normally pick up that Russia's emphasizing. Catholic and Orthodox energy is rising in America for the first time. Do you guys see the significance of that now? Like, there's so many things that seem just like a little off that when you see the broad dynamics, you're like, you can sew it all together. So she's referring to that alliance Russia's trying to build. The lines of pro-Russia Catholics, pro-Russia Orthodox. Why? And why doesn't she include Protestants in there? Well, there's one. I should have pulled the clip where the episode when she comes back from her Russia trip, she starts talking about Russia being a holy country, and in Russia, she also said Russia is the key to like Christian salvation, including America to be saved. So that to me makes it clear she's planning to move there, because she's basically saying you're like, if you believe in salvation comes through Russia and being a part of that, then you have to move there. So to me, this case is, aside from even the lawsuits, take the lawsuits out of it. Like that, like you're basically saying you're spiritually required to do the best you can to serve Russia. Of course, she's planning on going there, but there she's talking about like a lobby within the United States. And the reason it's important is because we're going to talk about George Farmer and some of these connections. So now what we're seeing is that the international plan of Russia is now reflected in Candace's commentary about Christianity within America. Oh, and why doesn't she include Protestants in there? Is because in the video, her first episode after she comes back from Russia, she touches on Protestantism. She doesn't like that it's so pro-Israel, even though most Catholics are too, but she didn't go there. She actually says, and she says it with such spite and arrogance. She goes, Judeo-Christian values, whatever that is, Judeo-Christian, like as if that's inconsistent, which shows that she has no clue about Christianity. She just adopts the anti-Semitic version of Christianity that has historically existed because people are bigoted from age to age. That just is going to happen. But yeah, so the fact that she framed it that way, she came back, it's like Russia good. And then Protestants and their Christian Zionism and Judeo-Christian. She doesn't even like that term. That's the conflict there. She sees herself as a holy warrior in the spiritual struggle within Christianity, and she has declared her side. And there she's saying she's encouraged by the rising of this Orthodox Catholic alliance within the United States. And obviously, again, most Orthodox, definitely most Catholics are not on board with this, but she's not going to say that. She's not going to. Whenever these people do these type of coalition building, the whole idea is to make it sound as if the entire group is on your side. So this is very, very important. Now, how does she reconcile that, right? Because she's saying, so she's Catholic, and I only realized this, actually fully got it today. So she contemplated joining the Russian Orthodox Church, which means joining the KGB, essentially. And then she chose not to. She became a Catholic. George Farmer's a Catholic. They're Catholic for now, but they're extremely pro-Russian Orthodox. So at some point, don't you have to say, well, there's a conflict there? Like, how can you say Russia represents true Christianity, but you're a Catholic? Here's how. I was looking at some of the ways that Russia describes its ideology and its version of the faith, and it aligns with what Candace says, but she's not that articulate, and so she hasn't gotten to this point yet. So Putin says what makes Russia different is that it is a state civilization. So there's like almost a collectivist form of spirituality and salvation. Like those when Candace said following Russia's lead is the key to America's salvation. That's a collectivist approach. It's not an individualistic thing. Personal relationship with God, with Jesus, personal accountability. That's in there, but a big part of it is what nation state you're a part of, what group. So her defining a country as potentially being the spiritual salvation of another country lines right up with how Putin defines Russia as a state civilization rather than a traditional nation state like the United States. And where does that come from? Where does that appear? The Russian Orthodox Church preaches officially that America's melting pot is false. Arguably satanic, but at least false. And if you believe the melting pot part of American ideology is false, and you want to defeat America, what do? You do exactly what Russia and Alexander Dugin is doing. You view all those fissures. When we talk about our diversity, we're proud of it because we understand that it strengthens us. Being around people you disagree with makes all of us better. And having different cultures, that makes that's like amazing about America. Most countries fall apart, but we have this amazing country where like we all grow together. So Russia's saying that's false, partially because they have to, because if you admit that the American ideology works, then your own population is going to want it. Like in order to justify your dictatorship, you need the promise of America to fail or at least lie about it. But they say the melting pot thing is arguably even unchristian because it's not recognizing that certain groups are just fundamentally different. So that's a sharp contrast with America. And here you have Candace kind of like that. That's why she was saying that weird thing about Russia being the salvation of America. So there's a geographic identity here. So would they feel necessarily that they have to choose between Catholicism and being an Orthodox Christian or even a member of the Russian Orthodox Church? Not really. We think
quickly want to pop in because Wild and Wired Media sent us on X the video of where Candace is talking about being spiritually moved by Russia.
Oh, let's do it. Let's play it.
Pop that up. So here, let me get this, share that.
And keep in mind, she doesn't attribute this to a person or a spiritual journey. She attributes it to a country, guys. All right,
and this is from RT.com.
It's from RT. Today,
it's from RT. So they are promoting Candace Owens saying this. So let's pop this up. Let's hear in her own words how she was moved.
Look how satanic she looks at.
I encourage literally every person in the world to visit Russia. Apply for a visa. You actually are allowed to do that, Dana. Go see the Kremlin Museum.
So quick question, Ryan. Back here in the top right, is that an Orthodox cross?
Oh, good call. I don't want to say yes or no because I wouldn't say I trust my judgment enough on that yet.
Well, because I'm a Christian. I was raised Catholic. I'm Protestant right now. Most of the crosses in Western Christianity are pretty plain, except for like some of them have some designs. But I don't know. It looks like maybe it's Jesus on there faded out. It could be Jesus.
I've never been a Catholic, so I don't know what range,
I don't
exist
know
there.
I'm just curious. Anyone in the chat can look at that. Maybe I'm reading it.
If anybody knows.
But let's keep rolling.
Keep going.
Be spiritually moved by Russia. Everything, and I mean everything that we have been told about Russia is a lie. Okay? So when Tucker Carlson was going around looking at the grocery stores, that was not propaganda. That is real. Like I said, an entire Catholic family moved there from Iowa. And I asked them blankly, is this just in Moscow? They live an hour and a half outside. No. This is one of the most amazing things is how cheap the food is, how healthy the food is at every places like Whole Foods. They particularly pointed out the grocery stores. But I don't want you to take it from me. I don't want you to take it from Tucker Carlson. I want you to go for yourself. I want you to use your own eyes, and I want you to believe your own eyes. I
find it interesting, too, that, obviously her and Tucker have been the two that have been really pushing a lot of Russia, but I do find it interesting that she specifically mentions, don't take it from me or Tucker, and kind of really couples them both in terms of we are pro-Russian. I know Tucker has come out more because he did the RT interview and stuff like that, but this was pre that. So she's already putting Tucker into that camp of pro-Russia. So that's also interesting. But
I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up there too, guys. I mean, think about it. He already talked about buying a house in Qatar. So the idea of living overseas or having property overseas is not foreign to him. That idea is on his mind. And he just said that of all countries he's visited, Russia is his favorite. So if you like Qatar so much, he's thinking about buying a house there. But Russia is his favorite. And he says he's under investigation for potentially violating the Foreign Agent Registration Act. And there's certain things, guys, sometimes on this podcast, I'm going to say things, and I'm always going to cite publicly available evidence. I'm not going to say anything that I can't justify with publicly available evidence. Sometimes I'm prioritizing certain things I say because I have something in the works or I know of something.
You
So
got to wait, Ryan. We got to make sure that they come back. Tell them you're going to tell them next episode.
I will reveal it in an upcoming episode.
Yeah, and upcoming. We have it. We've
some
unlocked
things requires careful handling.
So real quick, I'll pop out, but we have a super chat. March on 2027 with the $20 super chat coming in and saying, love your show. You have a fan here in New Mexico. The Orthodox priests are allowed to marry. You can't be both. So thank you, Marchon. We appreciate that. But
thank you for that.
Yeah,
by the way,
100%.
Peter, if you guys want a comment to appear and also address it, super chat will get you that, but it's also a great way of helping me. I'm doing everything I can to try to get as self-sufficient as possible. And Alex, knows me personally. By the way, everyone check out his YouTube channel also, the Alex Cuesta
Cuestacast. We've switched. We're Cuestacast now. Yeah. It was the Alex Cuesta show. Now it's Cuestacast.
Awesome. So make sure you guys tune into that. But Alex would let you know from knowing me personally, the extent to which I am trying to go so I can continue doing this work. But it's always going to come down to whether people are willing to help me and they see enough value in this to provide a little bit of support. That's kind of that's the big question mark. Now, notice in that video, Candace also talks about the traditionalist Catholic family that comes from the Midwest. So we identified who that is. And he has a YouTube channel that she didn't appear on. Now, isn't that a little weird, guys? Like you go to a country and you meet with someone that you know, and it's like he has a YouTube channel, but you don't even do that. She stayed with this individual. If you look at episode 1, Cracking the Candace Code, you will see me go more into that, the significance of who she stayed with and who she met with there. So you guys can go check that out. As for the being both Orthodox and Catholic, I wasn't actually saying, I'm glad you said that because it helps me clarify what I meant. So in the Western world, we view religion as like not having borders, right? Well, Putin, when he says Russia as a spiritual entity has geographical borders, essentially. It's a civilizationist state, not a typical nation state. He's viewing Russian Orthodox people, but especially Orthodox, as having certain political and geographical limitations, right? Because they reject the melting pot. So we might say that's crazy. It's not. The melting pot idea is crazy to them. They think people are different and there should be a certain level of separation, and it doesn't mean one's better than the other. Like they'll buy into that. But so if you're a Catholic, I think from their perspective, they would argue you can be equally pro-Orthodox, Russian Orthodox Church, as you are pro-traditionalist Catholic. But you don't have to necessarily choose between them, because why are you Catholic? Because you reside in the West. You reside in Europe or the United States. So you're Catholic. But then the Orthodox is a specific people group in a specific area. And so there isn't that contradiction. So I hope that kind of makes sense. It's hard for Americans to grasp that, and I only fully grasped it today. Because I was struggling with what they meant about it, and now I got it. There is also part of this ideology that Russia pushes, and you'll see some of the people that Candace and George are involved with adopt this as well. And this is all background for what I'm about to get into in terms of the network. The Third Rome, the idea of a Third Rome, this explains the Orthodox Catholic non-contradiction thing, because the Russian Orthodox Church and the believers in this type of authoritarian Christianity say that Russia is the true successor to the Roman Empire. Russia represents Eastern Orthodox Christianity, and that should be the seat of Christianity in the body of Christ. So they are inherently in conflict with the Pope, the Vatican. Why? Because it's part of the West, so it's inherently there, but it's also a competition. That's the false successor. The true successor to the Roman Empire is supposed to come from Moscow. Now this seems a little in the weeds, but just think about all these elements coming together. It explains a lot about why Candace and George and Putin and all, why all these seemingly innocuous statements are being said in a particular order, because to them there's just an inherent struggle with the Vatican and Rome, and that leads us to the specific brand of Catholicism that we see Candace and George embracing and promoting, which aligns with opposition. They would argue not disloyalty, they call it loyal opposition to the powers that be in the Vatican and in Rome. So that would naturally, if you feel that there is a spiritual cleansing or uprising in a sense that has to happen within the Catholic Church, then where is the true seat? If that seat is spiritually sick, what do? Well, there's got to be an alternative, right? Because in Catholicism, there's a certain level of hierarchy you have to believe in. It's Moscow, the third Rome. Like it just, that starting point leads you there. And Steve Bannon, yes. So I cut a lot out of this because I know that this is a little bit more dense, so I could get to some of the other elements and people can see the full gravity of it. But right now I'm just trying to outline the ideology so that you can see why these individual tweets and stuff that I might point to that in isolation would seem kind of ridiculous that I'm just pointing to, but you got to see how that forms an essay. You know, I'm showing you sentences, you put together the sentences, and then you get the essay representing the ideology. So now now that hopefully I've adequately explained the brands of Christianity involved in this Russian influence operation that involves Scientology in Iran, let's look at how it's playing out, specifically what Russia's game plan is for George and Candace, and why I say this is the farmer factor. Like that, like in order to understand what's going on, you have to know the farmer factor, and that we're going to outline. Alex, let's go to the next one on the list. So I want to show. So we described the ideology, but what does Russia see in Candace and George? Well, here's let's show everyone that screenshot of that Russian state interview with Candace. Okay, so yeah, I did take that screenshot at a particularly funny moment where she looked very, very enjoyable to be around. So this is when she was in Russia, in Moscow, and gave an interview to one of the state-directed media outlets run by the Russian Orthodox Church, and like one of the top tier ones there. And this is the announcement promoting the interview with Candace. And that's what it looks like. And look at some of the themes here, saying, you know, how did she escape the pursuit of the American dream? That's something she talks about in the interview. That's pretty scary, right? I mean, you can't say you're America first if you say you've escaped the pursuit of the American dream. Why did America replace God with science? So she does characterize science as being at war with God, and then therefore America is pro-science and therefore becoming anti-God. That sounds nuts, but just hold on to that because that's going to be relevant. That's not just something insane. Atheism has a satanic theology, but what goes on here is, so what are they doing here? They're setting her up as somewhat of a spiritual authority, but let's go to the transcript, the Parsuna transcript. So this is a transcript of that interview, and we have some highlights. This will show you, it's just like when in a movie you're rolling out new characters and you have to introduce them to the audience. That's what Russia's doing. They're rebranding Candace. So, and they're lying while they do it. So Candace is the host of the largest English language political news show in the world. She is not. But anyway, she's a conservative political activist. She is not. holds a degree in journalism. I think that's not true also. I'm not sure she completed school to get that. I mean, someone in the chat can let me know. I think she didn't finish. She is married to George Farmer. This is interesting, right? So George Farmer is not a known name. So why are they introducing the husband in here? It could be to show that she's a family person. Russia's the guardian of traditional values. Okay, but just think about this: a British media entrepreneur, traditional Catholic, right? So the Russian Orthodox Church saying her husband's awesome because he's a traditional Catholic with a theological education from Oxford. Now, he's not a theologian. That's not really relevant to describing who he is until you get to what I'm about to show you. Like for him, you would say tech entrepreneur. There's a bunch of things you would mention, but what are they emphasizing? That he is a credible religious scholar. All right. So you have to pay attention to these little things. And that was scripted too. That's not improvised. That's the intro to a show. All right, let's scroll down. Let's get to the next highlight in there. All right. So this is kind of the key to understanding what's going on with Candace, and people have suspected this. Like, where's she getting some of these views from? Well, they quote to her, and notice the Russians are quoting this to her, so they want to pivot to George as an authority. Your husband once said, everything is guided by theology. The whole world is theology. How do you understand that? And then she goes on and starts explaining it. But that reflects a decision on the part of the Russians. Candace has a spiritual guide. Her husband is as authority. So that see the rollout here. If we go to the next quote, let's scroll down. So you have a brilliant husband. You said atheism is also a kind of theology. She goes, okay, in many circumstances, a satanic theology. All right, let's go to the next. And I just thought this was funny. There's a moment of partial sincerity. You can actually see it in her eyes at this moment when she talks about this. Like I suspect there's things she has done that we don't know about that bother her about herself, just by looking at the change in her facial expressions and how she talks about this. She goes, forgiveness is the hardest element. Yeah, I mean, that's obvious by, her behavior and how much she didn't like what Erica did when Erica Kirk forgave the assassin of her husband. Like, she can't relate to that at all. And she says, so all my priests will say to me, the thing you have to contend with most within you is vengeance. Vengeance belongs to the Lord. And then she frames it as, oh, well, I have that because I'm so self-righteous. I don't like evil in the world. So, I mean, of course, that's what a narcissist does. And that's how she contends with what appears on her face, which is a slight level of disturbance and guilt about having that inside of her. So you can see it if you watch it, but it's hard to watch because the Russian language is over it. You see that she's like, there's that sincere moment. She seems a little vulnerable. I have trouble with forgiveness and vengeance. And then she goes back into Candace mode. Stand up to evil. All right, let's keep going. Let's see here. She left the cult of science. Science is a cult. Yeah, all right. Science is a pagan faith. And, so Russia's feeding that line to her here. Like, she said it, but the Russians liked it, and they're setting up these questions because the transitions are not smooth. These transitions are not improvised. You can tell the guy these are my questions. This is what we decide on. It's always been at war with the church because they want people to believe humans had the answers. Now, what's funny is Candace is always saying she has the answers to everything. Well, I guess because she says that she's God's conduit. It's not her answers. It's God's answers. I guess that's why she can say that and not feel completely foolish and hypocritical. All right, we can keep going. Also, think about this. If you discredit science, if she can teach her audience that science is bad, and anything that is an answer coming from humans is like an anti-God thing to do, if somehow she could convince her audience to buy into that, you lock them down. I mean, it's pretty hard to reach cult followers who say science is bad. You can't use science. You're trusting science? Oh, well, yeah, I'm not going to listen. oh, it's coming from a human source. Like, I'm not going to listen. When you become this is also interesting. You guys know how I call the threat the global seditionist movement, because I want to move away. The woke left and woke right are accurate things, and you should understand them. But the seditionist element is where the real threat comes in. They want to unravel society. They want to defeat us. It's not just radicals or misbehaving people in American society that we need to confront. It's a foreign influence operation. It's an attack. It is an unfolding attack. And here, she's kind of hinting at that. She goes, when you become an activated citizen, you want to put faith in institutions. This is a little bit of accelerationism, if you guys know that. The idea to tear down the institutions. It's not some institutions, some people, it's you want to put faith in institutions. That's bad. That means you want to tear down institutions. And you believe that you can change something through the political system. Constitutional republic, democracy, that's what she's talking about. I had a big letdown about that. It was hard because I put so much of myself into it. No, you didn't, Candace. Anyway, then I checked myself and thought, why did I think this was going to be the answer? Of course not. Snob. Being snobby towards the founding fathers and patriots. She may not admit it, but that's a call to sedition, guys. That's a call for revolution. It's saying, and if you look at how that conversation's going, talk about what you're spiritually required to do, and then she's now going to saying the American system is bad. It's a myth that you can change things through our elections and our system. See, it's much more insidious than people realize. I highlighted this because, man, remember the episode about Putin's decree that I mentioned, that in order to move to Russia, you have to believe certain things, oppose certain things. And one of them actually is emphasizing the beauty of Russia. Like, these weird ways of complimenting Russia fit essentially the application process to join Russia. But it's even better if you can tie it all together with the Russian ideology. That's what's happening here. So she says, oh, these cities with paper-thin walls make you hopeless. Bashing American architecture. Even American architecture is inferior to Russia. And then she ties it to, you don't realize what it does to you. Oh, she's such an authority. Thanks for teaching us, Candace. You don't realize what it does to you spiritually when something is plain and ugly and utilitarian. Yeah, guys, so, you're spiritually affected. The Holy Spirit is limited based on the beauty of the architecture you're around, guys. Yeah, thanks. That's in the Bible. But then you come to a place like Moscow, you go to Red Square. Of all places to mention, Red Square, and you're blown away. And she already said the places that are appealing to her in terms of architecture gives her that spiritual connection. So what's giving her a spiritual connection? What's she saying? Red Square. What is her theology? What is her Christianity? Communism, but under a different name. Okay, I'm not sure if there are. Let's see if there are any other highlights. I forget if there was anything else I want to point. All right, there we go. Oh, we've gone through a culture where everything should be accepted. Absolutely not. That's a ridiculous premise. It's a ridiculous premise because it's not true. I don't know why people say this. You might have a legitimate criticism that we're too accepting of certain things, but like that's a mile away from saying everything should be accepted. We're not like that. So separating those is crucial because it's actually quite dangerous when you say you have to accept everybody as they are. It's a pretty dangerous line of thinking there to her psychology. One of the greatest compliments I get from my podcast audience is, because of you, I started going to church. Oh, on that point, I had a tweet that got a lot of attention because I challenged our audience. I said, yeah, since the Bible says we're supposed to know people by their fruit. If they're genuine, we'll know them by their fruit. What results from what they do, if it's in alignment with the Bible's teachings. And I said, so any of you, and I had so many responses, point to me an episode of her podcast that led to you to doing something like become more charitable or how it strengthened your faith. Something tangible. Specify what happened in a specific episode that affected you in a positive, specific way. I got about 3 answers and maybe hundreds, definitely, I think it was hundreds of other responses just insulting me and saying, just doing the normal thing. I didn't get a good answer. The closest thing to an answer I got was a few people who said, oh, the episode after Charlie Kirk was assassinated because she said she was going to crusade for truth. That's positive. That made me feel encouraged. Like that's the best they could come up with was, I like hearing the word truth, and I liked her content, so it made me feel good. That's what it came down to. So I didn't get anyone that said, because of Candace, I started going to church. So it is not one of the greatest compliments that she make it sound like people say it to her all the time. Maybe someone said it to her somewhere, but I've seen no evidence anywhere at any time among her massive audience of anyone telling a story like that. This is hysterical. Okay, I always talk about how much she lacks self-awareness. And I know I'm just kind of ragging on her a little bit. We'll get back to the influence ops thing. It's just I can't pass this up. What I'm very good at is letting something go, just closing the door. No. And you see she catches it. Look at the sequence in this paragraph, right? And this just shows how impulsive she is and that she doesn't think much, because you wouldn't trip up. So before she says, oh, my priest tells me I'm too driven by vengeance, I have trouble forgiving. Then she says, what I'm very good at is letting something go, just closing the door. You can tell by the context there, she says that, she thinks it's a good line. And then is like, wait a minute, crap. So then she goes, I used to think that was forgiveness. Close the door, never speak to them again. Now she's clarifying. She detected that she just contradicted herself. And so she's scrambling. And she tries to say it's good. What I mean is it's good not to dwell. I mean, word salad. All right. My husband is thinking big picture, how to protect our family, the children's future. Tell, guys, tell. Protect the children's future. Protect from what? And what for the children? So it's not just about improving her life, right? So she's doing the propaganda for Russia. It's not just Russia is better. It's not just that she has a moral, spiritual obligation to support Russia. She mentions her husband, and what's the next thing that follows? To protect our family, the children's future. If you saw the first episode of the podcast, Cracking the Candace Code, you understand what's going on psychologically there. That in its own wouldn't mean anything. So if this is the first time you're seeing the show, it's not persuasive. It's only persuasive if you realize what's linked in her mind. My husband, Russia-connected George Farmer, who has traveled to Russia once or twice every single year for a very, very long time. It's my spiritual guide. Oh, my husband is thinking big picture. Oh, but about what? Of all issues? How to protect our family, the children's future. What are they afraid of? It's the lawsuits. Because it's not just protect our family, it's the children's future. So it's not a physical threat necessarily, right? Like that doesn't fit there. It's not like death threats around the corner. How do I protect the children's future? I believe she's absolutely talking about the wealth that she doesn't want to hand over when she loses the lawsuits, and therefore is planning on leaving the country, move her assets to Dubai probably, but almost certainly move to Russia, so that when the judge says hand over your assets, you can be like, see ya. Next one, or let's keep scrolling. Let's just see if there's anything else. Yeah, all right. Toxic masculinity, the natural aggression. Okay, we can keep going. Yes. She's talking about her crazy love story where John Mappin, the Scientologist, Russia-connected John Mappin, puts together the event that she says that she was just spiritually called to go to London. Then what do you know? There's a giant fundraiser that would benefit her there that he puts on. She meets a rich, super rich husband. She knows that that's her husband because she looks at him. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that he was super rich and that he had big ambitions of gaining power, and Mappin was lobbying for this to happen. We got engaged after 18 days. People thought we were insane, but she sees that as like proof that they're spiritually bound together. That was a miracle. It's not meant to be comprehended. Think about that. If you teach your audience that the things I do are not meant to be comprehended, therefore, if you don't comprehend what I do, it is proof of my divine guidance. I mean, that's a cultist tactic, guys. I don't even know if she knows it. It might just be so ingrained in her. All right, let's see if there's another quote. made a bit of sigh of relief, look back on my 20s, and I had such anxiety. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know my purpose. People tell you 20s are the best time. They actually aren't. And puzzle piece, then you do know your purpose. And then things start to make sense. She gets marriage so important because it's divine. All right. So what that means is, even when she was working for Charlie, right? She says getting married is when she felt her purpose. That's when she felt the divine calling. All this stuff about, she was her and Charlie. No, something huge was missing. She did not feel that was where she was meant to be. That was not her cause. She doesn't realize it. She admitted it there. So something began after she met Farmer. That said, that's the cause I need to be a part. Now I'm connected to the divinity. Okay, so that's the transcript of that Russian interview. So now what we're going to do is how does that connect to America, right? Because I'm just showing sympathy and like their ideas. Well, now we know that Farmer is kind of like the theological guide for Candace, and Russia, for various theoretical reasons, is boosting him as a spiritual authority. Russia is preparing for something because they need him to be respected as a religious authority for whatever it is that they plan for the future in their partnership with him. Now, the problem is that Farmer hasn't given too many interviews, right? And it still raises the question of why him? Like, all right, is it just because it's Candace's husband? Like it doesn't quite, like there's something missing. I think most people would agree. Well, here we're going to answer some of those questions. If this Russian offensive involving pro-Russia Catholicism is such a thing, and it's one of the vectors into influencing and empowering Candace and George, then there's got to be an infrastructure, right? Like they're not going to gamble everything on them, on Candace Owens and George Farmer. No, there's got to be a bigger ecosystem you plug them into, or you pluck them out of. So let's follow that evidence trail. All right. So if the true source of Candace's thoughts on theology is not just Russia, because someone led her to Russia, and we believe it's George Farmer because Farmer was going to Russia once or twice a year for so long, and she and the Russians are saying that's the authority in her life. Let's see what else he says. He actually gave a speech at the Catholic Identity Conference in 2025. So he's coming out now as a spiritual authority. If you listen to how he's talking, he before he was quiet, he tries to open by being humble, by the way, and saying like, other people that are better believers should be speaking. But then you look at the content of his speech, and he talks with certainty and authority, and like it's pretty ridiculous. So how much of Candace's certainty is actually her being certain because George is her husband? Like, it's not so much about confidence in her, it's confidence in him. It's because she's parenting him. But I think that's a big part of it. So this is important for a couple of reasons. Number one, we're going to see the bigger, what is the bigger Catholic thinking behind Candace that Russia wants to embrace. That will tell us on a broader level what Russia is trying to produce, what Russia is trying to proliferate. But because he's speaking at an event, that helps us now identify the infrastructure, the factories, the distributors of that propaganda and ideology.
I also just want to point out real quick that this event isn't something that was years ago. This was last year in the end of November. Yes. So this is in the thicket of everything after Charlie. Candace she's in crazy mode by this point because this is now September, October, end of November. So this is important in the fact that he now picks this point to then start talking like this. And so if this was something that was 10 years ago, maybe you could see, okay, Candace got guidance from him. But no, this is post everything that started going on. So I think that's important.
Yeah, you're right. It's an intensification. It's strategic. So
yes. So Ryan,
do you know how long the video is? Because I don't know. I've been going on a long time.
It's 39 minutes. I
Ooh.
don't know if you have any timestamps on your end that you want me to skip around to. I could do that.
I just have the transcript that I sent you where I highlighted some things.
I could see.
You want to try to skip around on it so that we don't, or at least play it at like double the speed, maybe.
Yeah, we'll do like 1.5, and we'll see.
So
how that
basically, you
works.
guys, this conference, which is owned by something called the Remnant, and that's a little scary because like you'll see them around on social media, like it's not a totally fringe group. The Remnant puts on this conference. They chose George Farmer to come in, not just to talk about like as a celebrity guest. They, just like the Russians, give him a platform as a massive authority to speak with total confidence, because what do they have him speak on? The Antichrist. What is the religion of the New World Order? I don't know about you guys, but like you should have, like, you want the top scholars in the world to be talking about that, not some kid that even just went to Oxford, not a George Farmer. Like that's significant. That is an anomaly. That is strange. And it's strange to have all things to talk about. George Farmer is saying my divinely inspired message to the world has to be about the Antichrist and who it is and how to fight it. And we can just play it, and then
you'll tell me when
point
to
out some things. Yeah.
poke in and tell me when to stop when you want me to.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get it going here.
George represents a man who's got influence in a world in which what we need to be thinking about is how do we take this message for the kingship of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, for Catholic restoration, out into the marketplace in a big, big way. And this should not be such a challenge, because what the world is giving us right now, what the world is giving young people, is pathetically lame, if you think about it. I mean, it used to be, I always say when I grew up in the 80s and you had people like Madonna and Janet Jackson or whatever, and there was a certain seductiveness about it culturally. What's happening now is anything but seductive. I mean, I don't even want to go get a tooth drill, let alone the surgeries that they're talking about putting young people through today. This is really bizarre. Ritualistic, sort of spiritual in a way, and anti-religious rituals that they're doing to young people. This is not attractive. And I've noticed this as a father of 7 children. It's a lot easier now than it was in the 80s, because that's not good. What they're presenting out there, the green hair, the spikes all over the place, everything is padded and looks like something out of the Star Wars bar scene. So it's not attractive. All we have to do as Catholics is get over ourselves, get out of our own way, and take the beautiful pearl of great price, the wonderful thing, the religion that built Christendom, that built the greatest civilization.
Let's just try to skip ahead.
It has absolutely nothing but depth.
When we actually get to George being introduced here he is.
You know what? Let's even go a little bit. Just go a little bit in, and we'll just see where we're at, since I have the transcript here. And
do you have anything that you're looking where you want to start at?
yeah, the Christendom as a political. Yeah. The paragraph. The one word answer is no. So it's a few paragraphs in.
Okay, this might be. There we go. Wow.
Is such a horrific anti-Semite and all these horrible things is because her husband is a sedevacantist. And this was the first time that I've been accused of being a sede, but there we go. And I actually thought this was quite funny because, of course, if this rabbi had known that the origin of my invitation to the CIC came on a day when another great Catholic event happened. It was May the 8th. 2 things happened. 1, I was invited to speak at CIC. And number 2, we had a new pope. But that's kind of secondary, right? And normally when I am invited to speak, I sort of say, there's more holy men, there's more erudite men, there's more intelligent people than me. But when it comes to talking about anti-Christendom, I actually think that erudition, intelligence, and holiness are probably counting against you. So perhaps this is why it was gifted to me. So talking about anti-Christendom and the New World Order religion, what does that even mean? What is anti-Christendom? Well, Christendom as a concept is really something now that we use in the past tense. The geographical, socio-political bounds of Christendom have really been torn down in the last few hundred years. And really ever since the time of the Reformation and the shattering of the Catholic unity of Europe that had pre-existed with an objective moral standard, has the concept of Christendom been in retreat. And since we're not taking a walk through history and looking back at what historically opposed Christendom in the medieval period, aren't we sort of at a dead end when we're examining the concept of anti-Christendom? Well, the one-word answer is no. Whilst we are correct to say that Christendom is a concept both politically and geographically, and with the exception of microcosms such as the CIC socially really is a dead concept in many ways, the pendulum against Christendom and against what Christendom stood for has actually been picking up speed for centuries.
So that's one of your highlighted there.
Yeah. So it's easy to miss. And I think what we'll do is we'll go through the transcript here like we did, so that.
Well, I have the transcript pulled up on another video on the side, so I'll just look at it and I'll pop in for the things that you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because I don't want people to have to listen to.
Yeah.
Because the transcript is what was published on the conference's website, which differs a little bit from his speech, just a little bit. But anyway, think about what is he lamenting there, right? Like, we always say, when we listen to a speaker, if they use language similar to things that we think, we assume we're on the same page. Actually, look at what he said. He's lamenting, like, yeah, okay, the supposed decline of the body of Christ, Christianity, Catholicism. Okay, so that's what most people take away from that. And look at what he says specifically. Christendom as a political and geographical concept. Apart from some very isolated social microcosms, is dead. The pendulum has swung against it. So what he's saying is that he wants Christianity as a political and geographical concept. What was I saying before about how Putin and Russia defines their joint nationality and the Orthodox Church and how it can ally with the Catholics? It's a political and geographic concept. It stops at a certain point, at a certain border, but you still can be in league with people outside of that border. So that's why you can be someone like George, a traditionalist Catholic, and have an allegiance to the Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox Church, because you're just outside of the geographical borders of that. Almost like if your twin brother lives in New York and you live in New Jersey, it's like, well, how much separation is there? Like, you can't, person in New Jersey can't say he's a New Yorker, the New Yorker can't say he's a New Jerseyan, but they're both part of America. Is kind of where it is. So so this is unique because the Catholicism he's talking about is no separation of church and state, or at least it's limited, because he's saying we need things to go back to the way they were. Modernity is bad, and it has to have geographical borders. There has to be a country. There's a geographical concept. Okay, we can keep going.
Anti-Christendom found its intellectual footing in the Enlightenment and then perfected itself in the Satanic century, which is the 20th century. The human mind, truly unfettered from all previous moral standards, went completely mad and brought death, destruction, and genocide on a level that had never previously been seen. And I don't just mean the obvious examples of all the wars. I also mean the sexual revolution that eats humanity from the inside and corrupts the inner fabric of the soul. I also mean the neoliberal gospel of libertarian capitalism that commoditizes
all right, stop there.
P&L statements.
Yep, I figured I would stop after that one. Yep, go.
Perfect. So this is big. Word use, vocabulary is important because there's multiple ways you can describe something. And if somebody describes something in a certain way that isn't commonly used, they probably got it from somewhere. So first, what he says is, at least, I don't know if he said it there, but the text on the website was, they start talking about anti-Christendom. Where did it come from? It found its intellectual footing in the Enlightenment of the 18th and 19th centuries, perfecting themselves in the Satanic century, also known as the 20th century. And that's when he says, so I'm not sure if he said that sentence because I was trying to find something while he was talking, but think about that. He said, what is the Antichrist? He's preaching to us. What is satanic? Where does it appear? The Enlightenment. Is that conservative, guys? Is that America first or the West first? Like, that's as traitorous, as anti-American as it can be. When did Satan start? With the Enlightenment. And when was Christianity in a better spot? When it had political and geographic boundaries. See how he's not referencing Putin. He's not even using it's hard to catch, but he's describing the Russian form of Christianity. Now, the next thing he says, this was good. Really important. He starts talking about neoliberalism. Do we have... Okay. So where does that term come from? Because there's many ways. Like Candace does... I haven't seen her use the term neoliberalism. Kind of a weird term. Why would you use that term when most people don't know what you mean by that in that context? He doesn't define it. And there's multiple ways you can say, if you want to say modernity is bad, the West is bad, there's a bunch of things you can say. He's saying, neoliberal. When was the last guy on this podcast that used that term? Alex, you want to show people?
Yep, let me pop that in right there real quick.
That'd be a coincidence, right? If it's relevant, who he's
We talked
Copying.
about this one.
All right, what is this? Oh, this is Putin's decree. You see how things come full circle, guys? Look at this. So this is Putin's decree translated into English. And what is the criteria for people who have spiritual and moral allegiance to Russia and want to move there? What is the program for Westerners designed for? For people who are oppressed by destructive neoliberal ideological settings that contradict traditional Russian spiritual and moral values. See?
Yep.
Now, what have Candace and George been doing? All about upholding, embracing, and announcing their allegiance to Russian spiritual and moral values. Now he says specifically, what's he opposed? The destruction of the neoliberal movement. And who does Russia also say is the Antichrist? Russia and Dugin have been saying it's going to be led by a Jew, but it represents the West. He's not saying West, he's saying neoliberal. If you're trying to make the case to make sure you get in, that's what you do. You say it, you use that word. Can you prove it 100%? I guess not, but come on. At least substantively, you can say he is making the argument that is necessary for being accepted under that program. And I'm not saying he's lying either. I think he genuinely believes it. But the fact that he's using the exact word that Russia has chosen to weaponize to describe this effort to seduce Westerners and get some of them to move to Russia to form an ideological launching pad against the West, specifically against the West Christianity, and he uses that same exact term, that's quite a coincidence. Let me see, because I know I'm running late. Let's see. I'm just going to go through the transcript, Alex, just for the sake of time. He also says libertarian capitalism. How do people say that this couple is conservative? So Satan is neoliberalism, and specifically he says the neoliberal gospel of libertarian capitalism. Like, if you believe libertarian capitalism is the Antichrist, the ultimate enemy of Christianity, you're not a conservative. Like, this is a joke. The next thing he says I highlighted, we have been defending traditional morality against the vanguard assault of Satan. Christianity in the West is retreating to the apostolic church that Pope Benedict spoke of. Okay, so the Russian ideology about Third Rome. He's criticizing the West because it's the Christianity in the West is retreating to the improper successor to the Roman Empire, according to the Russian ideology. The true one's in Moscow. It's not saying it, but if you're saying it's bad that the West is embracing one side, that means the other side is preferable. And he says we don't need to look far to see the religion of the Antichrist is on full display. The modernist, keyword here, modernist infiltration of the one organization that's supposed to stand against the Antichrist, namely the church. Next one, let's see, is this is another big one. Talks about anti-Christendom reaches a new height. When? The end of the Cold War. Christianity was doomed to irrelevancy as the collapse of competing global ideologies made us all the neoliberal individualists we are now. So what happens at the end of the Cold War that he says is the height of the Antichrist, the anti-Christendom? The Cold War ends when the Soviet Union collapses. He's saying Christianity was hurt by the collapse of the Soviet Union. That's a smoking gun quote, guys, about where that he's part of Russia's Tsarist Christian offensive. And he combines that with, well, what triumph? Neoliberalism. So that makes it clear. America's form of Christianity is neoliberalism. And it's a bad thing that it rose above what existed prior to the end of the Cold War. That's the Soviet Union. The next quote, I also want to say one more thing as a prelude. It is better to be fighting than to be conquered. even if that fight is a rebellion, even if that fight is guerrilla warfare, even if you're the last militia in the mountains, it is better to live for the freedom that Christ has set us free for than to be enslaved to sin and death. So he's inverting freedom. Just like Candace is, just like the Russian thing. They say, true freedom is not in what's happening in the West. He's saying, Christianity is under attack by the neoliberals in the West that proclaim freedom, but it's actually not freedom. It's enslavement. Christians are going to be enslaved by the neoliberals talking about freedom. That's the subtext there. It goes on to say, he talks about it's the Holy Spirit that's moving through the revival among traditionalist Catholics. So they're divinely called. And so here's where what's interesting here is that now he pivots again to being a conservative politically. He goes, the movement is so powerful that the enemy is now hell-bent on stopping it, even attempting to weaponize the U.S. federal government to crack down on it, meaning Catholics, during the last administration. Again, remember nuance. That's a big theme of this podcast on the counteroffensive. You may disagree with certain prosecutions or investigations of the Biden administration. There is a big gap between disagreeing with an action and saying something like the U.S. federal government is cracking down on Christianity on the behalf of the Antichrist. There's quite a big gap there. And then he starts describing what we need to do, meaning him and the organization he's speaking at. So what he's saying we need to do, like, take this literally. He says we have to build local. Total trust and devotion to God is to build local. Build a local community. Here's the part that bothers me. Build a local church. That means making something new. Not just go to the church, traditional Catholic churches. Build a local church. They're trying to build a Christian infrastructure. Build networks, thousands across the country. That's how minds are changed. Top down, or not top down. And he's talking about nonviolent revolution. He's talking about insurgency, spiritual insurgency. And again, he's implying the Antichrist is in charge of Christianity in the West. That would include Catholicism and Protestantism in that context. He's saying that the true Christians, him, and who he is allies with, have to build a new Christian infrastructure to take on the elites in the West. This is an attack on pro-Western Christianity, guys. I can't emphasize it enough. And then what does he say is the religion of the Antichrist? It's technology. This is where it gets trippy and weird. There's a few reasons why he might want to make this argument, but this is like weird. I'm not going to spend time on it. He says, it's technology, modernity. This like abstract concept you can apply to anything. What's the Antichrist? Technology, modernity. You might as well say, what is the Antichrist? Bad things. Like that's how substantive an answer it is. It's stupid. But he gives examples. What do they call it? You know, what's the Antichrist? Like, what is the Antichrist marketing? He puts it in quotes. Convenience. Now, why would Russia-aligned Christians want convenience to be interpreted as a satanic term, guys? Do you think there's a lot of convenience in Russia? Do you think in a place that's not capitalist like the U.S. is going to be great in the terms of convenience? No, they're trying to flip convenience and the successes of capitalism into something bad. All right, so convenience is a satanic term. Freedom. My God, this is awful. Freedom, efficiency, social in media, the social part of media, democratization. And he specifies these are the catchphrases for the West. He is saying the West. See, I've only read this a couple of times, so part of what you're seeing is actually my reaction to just being amazed and like infuriated by this. That this hasn't been found until now, and the fact that most people aren't going to care. Like, he's saying the Antichrist is the West, and the way you'll detect the Antichrist in the West is they talk about convenience, freedom, efficiency, social media, and democratization. This is sedition. This is the global seditionist movement I'm talking about. This is sedition. This is the global seditionist movement. It's not just anti-Semitism. It's not weirdos and cranks and conspiracy theorists. It is sedition. Get it through your heads. This is an attack. and total global digital surveillance through a non-human system of intelligence. Okay, all this abstract, trippy stuff. Basically, he's making the argument against technology. Why? The West leads in technology. I mean, if you're an enemy of the U.S., you need to make everything that is good about the West as superior and to appear negative. So he's saying what's great about the West? Oh, these are actually horrible. And those that don't have these good things, oh, well, that's just a sign that you're on God's side. The one sentence that I thought was hilarious, he starts talking about the damages of social media and having a phone and all this. And he makes valid points. I mean, nothing special, but he goes, so you keep hitting refresh to see if the notifications, your dopamine receptor is now attuned to flashes. He's describing Candace's business model. Like, you read this transcript, he talks about the problems of social media and what it does to people. He describes his wife. And he describes what his wife does to people. And for him to write this, he's not totally dumb. So I think he's as much of a guilty player as her. Like, this proves it, because this means he is fully conscious, aware of what she's doing, the effect she has on people, and that it's bad. And that it is bad. And he doesn't stop it, because it benefits him and benefits his ideological allies. Let me see if there's anything else in here. He starts talking about how he's involved in the technology industry, and so we have to invent new technology that is in compliance with God's teaching. So he's kind of actually making a business pitch. I mean, if he believes that that's what God is requiring him to do, because he says this is like God's mission for him, that means he has some sort of idea in mind to invent technologies that are in compliance with Christianity as he sees it, which means pro-Russia traditionalist Catholicism. I don't know what that is, but something's coming. Something's coming. He's working on something. And he says, what's the problem with major tech companies in the world? What do they have in common? That's right. None of them are Catholic. If these men, and they are all men, aren't Catholic, then why on earth would they align themselves with Catholic teaching? So he's saying we need Catholic technology entrepreneurs like him. And then he goes, several of them are homosexual. Most of them are nuns, like N-O-N-E-S, like they're not straight or gay or bi, they're just nothing. And that is to say they have no religion whatsoever. And then he goes, I can't believe he wrote this. It's just like Candace. Barely any of them are even conservative in a political sense, like it's a negative thing. Dude, you just said the enemy of Christianity is the Enlightenment and libertarian capitalism. You're not conservative in a political sense. That's sheer manipulation of, there's no worse example. And yes, I know what you're all thinking. Him attacking tech entrepreneurs for being gay probably also is a hypocrisy, but I'm not going to say it because I don't know it for a fact. I just know that someone I know and am friendly with says, and told me a long time ago before this got a lot of attention, that George Farmer sexually assaulted him and tried to make out with him at a bar. And this guy is extremely, extremely straight. He would not, like, there's no universe where it would be like, oh, Raheem Kassam I'm talking about, like Raheem led him on. Like that's not what's going on there. I think he said that Farmer was really drunk. So I guess he misinterpreted something, tried to make out with him. I believe he grabbed him somewhere, or tried to grab him somewhere. And then the last sentence here that I highlighted is a real winner. George Farmer preaches, and that's what he's doing. He's preaching, guys. Satan now has an easy and convenient portal located on all of us. If we stare into the blackness long enough, eventually it will consume us. So if we're on the phone and social media too much, guys, what happens? What happens? Satan consumes us. All right, so are you planning on getting a divorce then? Like the lack of self-awareness here is just, or he knows it and it's just, he's a total hypocrite because it's like, oh, well, if she does it and I do it, then it's, the rules don't apply. So those are all themes to be on the lookout for, and that will kind of explain some of the things that you're seeing. And you're going to see this appear more in your churches, guys, because, again, this is an attack. There's a factory. There are distributors. Crazy ideas a few years ago, things like saying Winston Churchill is the big villain of World War II. Nobody said that. If you said it, you'd be laughed out of a room and no one would talk to you ever again. But then you just have someone like Tucker Carlson mainstream it, and now these stupid ideas suddenly appear everywhere, and that's what's happening. This is in motion now, and what Farmer was preaching that aligns with Russia. Those are lines that they're going to magnify. There's a preview of what's coming to your church pews, the conversations you're going to be involved in. Now, what's interesting though is that on this podcast, I haven't talked about Russia saying, and I don't have at my fingertips, or I can't say that Putin has explicitly said this, that modernity overall, technology overall is satanic. I'm not aware of Putin being as direct as George in that, and like making it a core part of Russia's teaching. So at one point I was thinking, I was like, well, that's kind of a unique thing. It's like, is that just George's own spin on it? Like, is this reflecting independent thinking? Like, is he arrogant enough that it's like, this is his thing? Oh, no, guess what? Yeah, it also appears somewhere else. Alexander Dugin, Russia's point man for influencing MAGA and Christian conservatives, who's promoting this. He's reinventing biblical prophecy to be pro-Russia and pro-jihadist. So you look, July 15th, so recently, he said, the multipolar world, that's Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, all the bad guys. The multipolar world is the fight of tradition against modernity. That's what Farmer was preaching there, right? These vague concepts. I would have been embarrassed to give a speech like that. Most people would, because it's like all abstract and weird. That's like, you wouldn't normally go there, especially when the rest of the other parts, the speech starts a little specific and then it goes in this like weird mystical thing. It exactly matches Dugin. I can't prove he got it from there, but like, where else does this appear? That anyone that they're in contact with or anyone that's in their vicinity, either West representing modernity or humanity. The West is anti-human. Humanity, tradition. Those in the West who are on the side of tradition should embrace the multipolarity. Russia, Iran, North Korea, their allies. Otherwise, they'll still be on the side of modernity. So all of modernity is bad, anti-tradition, and that comes from another article Dugin put together. We can show that one, Alex.
So real quick, I just want to, an observation here with the modernity versus tradition, West versus humanity. A lot of the times in Marx's writing and other communist writings, Marxist writings, they call themselves humanist. They're a humanist movement. So they have used that term before to describe themselves, because they are describing themselves as they are for the humans, because they're for the collective. So even if you read even Frankfurt School stuff and things like that, like the humanist movement is very much a Marxist type of thing. So it's not by mistake that he chose West or humanity, because they see the West as the anti-human, the capitalist, the only items and what you can buy, and they are for the humans. They're the humanists. So the language there is also something that I think people need to be aware of when you see things like that. So.
Man, that's an excellent point. I totally bet you're right. I should have seen it, but you explained it very, very well, Alex. That's why people need to tune into your podcast. So that is, when I was talking about in the other episodes about Russia modernizing communism, they actually put together a task force and said, everyone's realizing communism sucks, so we need to reinvent a new Soviet ideology. They say, all right, don't call it communism anymore. It has to be Orthodox Christianity with communism in there under a new name, and then also nationalism, but it has to be like the Russian brand of nationalism, like Putin advocates. And so you're seeing that imported in there, and that lines right up with what George Farmer was saying about how the forces of anti-Christianity rose up when the Soviet Union collapsed. So that links right up with what Alex pointed out about the humanist identity. That was a very good addition. Thank you for that, Alex. So this is the article that Dugin was promoting. I saw someone said I missed when Ryan would talk about Mount Sinai. I just want to address that real quick. So that topic, it's about my film, Finding the Mountain of Moses, the real Mount Sinai in Saudi Arabia, which people I recommend you check out. That is going to play a role in this. I'm going to get to that. Like, you're going to be surprised at how that's going to be incorporated, but you're not going to get it unless you stick through all of this. And if I'm not seeing the conversation I was in response to, but if it's a complaint, like, oh, I don't like Ryan talking about this because I I'm here for the Mount Sinai biblical content. If you stick around and you see how that plays a role in all this, you're going to regret saying that. Let's put it that way. It all goes together. You're not going to be able to appreciate what I did with the Mount Sinai research and say I'm wrong about the rest of this, because it does play a role. All right, let's go on. Let's scroll down if we could on that article for Dugin. So he's condemning capitalism and liberalism. Once the West embraced individualism, remember Dugin advocates Russian Christianity. Again, individualism is satanic. So is capitalism, liberalism. Now, what are we hearing from the so-called conservatives, from Candace and George? Russia is the spiritual savior of the West if we accept it. It's all collectivist, state-based, the exact opposite of what's described as conservative values. So the West needs to reverse its intellectual history. And he says, you scroll down a little bit more because I think there's, this one, because it reminds me of, actually, I want to see in the chat if anybody knows. The only way to avoid the total catastrophe of the Western modernity is to return to the idealist, realist, pre-capitalist, sacred society of Middle Ages. There's somebody in this overall thing who said something very similar. Does anybody know? Put it in the chat, and I'll wait 5-10 seconds. Let's see if anybody can guess. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nobody's getting it. All right. Remember when Tucker Carlson said that the best system is the feudal system? And when Tucker went to Russia and interviewed Putin, who's the other person he interviewed when he was there that didn't get as much attention? It was Dugin. When Tucker had a show at Fox, most people don't know this, he did a segment about at his 8 p.m. news channel where you talk about the most important issues of the day. He talked about how Amazon wouldn't sell Dugin's book. Is that a fit for an 8 p.m. news show? Of course not. Not unless you're really attached to something. So it's all, once you understand these themes, you can see who's more connected than you would be able to tell normally just through like social media, because it's narrative launching. These ideas all connect, and they're limited in distribution enough that you know it's coming from the same spot. Now, the last thing I want to point to in this article Dugin wrote is the West is where the lights extinguish. The Iranian philosophy of Ishraq is key. And I think he goes on to explain it a little bit more. Actually, no, he doesn't. So around the same time is when Dugin endorses the Iranian style of government, even though it's Islamic. And that's why I said I suspect, I don't know, I would say I'm a little bit better than 50-50 confidence in this, that if that's true, that then Putin and Dugin and the other ones are anticipating modeling Russia a little bit more in the future on the Iranian model, but as a Christian counterpart. Because Putin does seem to want to, and there's indications he's doing this, make Russia more overtly like the old Russian Empire where he's a czar. Like, he doesn't call himself a czar, but everyone knows he wants to be one. Part of becoming more overt like that, and part of putting a marker in the ground where he can proclaim to the world, this is the proof that I lead the Christian world, and that my government, my country embodies Christian values, not the liars in the West, is if he adds a spiritual council, a council of clerics, to make it theocratic, just like Iran does, except Iran will actually sometimes deny being theocratic. They'll just say, oh, that council that can veto laws, they don't have complete power, so it's not a theocracy. Putin would probably do the same thing. But that would be a dramatic enough move, because at some point he's going to want to spark. All this stuff with Candace is getting a message out, but there's going to be lines in the sand where he's going to want to do something that proves that Russia is the true leader of the Christian world, that gets all Christians talking about the merits of whatever it is that he did. And now if Dugin is endorsing the Iranian style of government, and the Iranian style of government has something that Russia doesn't currently have, I would assume that Russia's considering adding that. And that would mean becoming more openly theocratic. And then at that point, it would be in the future, you would have people like Candace and Tucker. You'd be set up to have people to argue for it on your behalf. So if you're aiming to do that, make Russia more openly theocratic so you can claim to be the third Rome, the true successor of the Roman Empire, the true leader of the Christian world. If you're planning on doing that, if I was Putin, what would I do? I wouldn't have done it yesterday. I wouldn't do it today. I wouldn't do it tomorrow. I would first get Americans from the Western world, people in the Western world, Christians. I would recruit as many Christians as possible to build the propaganda apparatus to defend me and argue on my behalf when I finally cross that line. Just like in a political debate during an election, there's a debate and then you have the spin room, and the political parties have all their messengers already prepped and ready to carry out the message so that they can engage in the conversation surrounding their guys' actions and statements. Putin would want to do the same thing. So that's why I view what's going on with Candace and Tucker and everything as a precursor. This isn't the end. It's not like this is setting up for something bigger. Now let's go to, let's see. All right, so let's do this. There's a lot of other things with Russia and George Farmer. Some things that there were data points that were interesting but weren't smoking guns like some people thought they would be that they asked me to look for. There are other interesting leads I still want to follow up on. So I left out, like I had about 60 pages of notes. So I had to leave a lot out. I think there's a good point to stop with one final key thing missing. You now talking about an infrastructure, right? And so what this organization that chose to have George Farmer preach like a religious authority and preach this message specifically, did they know that what he was saying? Because he doesn't mention Russia in that sermon. So is that organization in on it, or were they like George, they know him, maybe he made a big donation, and they agreed with what he was saying about the perils of technology? Are they being used, or are they in on the coded messaging there? Because you should even be cynical towards me. It's like, is Ryan reading too much into this? You know, would it be fair to say, because that event had George speak there and say these things, does that indicate that there's a network operating for this that we can tell from that event? Alex, let's go to the next screenshot. So the Remnant is the group that owns the Catholic Identity Conference and puts it on. This is their website. I won't read it all, but basically, you can scroll down a little bit. I recommend if you guys are interested in this and this evidence trail that you read the whole thing. But basically, it's complaining about the state of Catholicism and the state of morals in the West. It complains about liberalism, again, saying that they're the true conservatives, complaining about the elite, saying that they're not, rebellious. They still have to have some loyalty to the Pope, but that basically things have to change. And they call it a traditional Catholic counter-revolution. It acknowledges sympathy with criticisms of the Vatican. I mean, this lines right up with Russia's Third Rome thing, but it lines up, but does it actually cross over into it? We're going to take a look. Let's go down a little bit more. It says loyal opposition. So George Farmer is involved with an organization that wants to wage a spiritual and ideological war within the Catholic Church. It's right there. That's why. So now we're getting closer. Now we know that this organization is at least of that ilk. They're not pro-Vatican. They're not pro the Pope. They are trying to challenge that authority. But is that enough to say that they understood those nuances and what George was saying? Is that enough to say that they know that what he's part of? Because I mean, almost nobody, except for people that watch this podcast, honestly, know the stuff I was pointing out just now, because if they did, I'd be citing it. So we gotta give people grace. So what is the Remnant about? Let's go to the next slide. Or the next file, Alex, I mean. Oh, look at these other videos that they post. As pro-Russia as it gets. And that's just one screenshot. You look, it just goes on and on and on, demonizing Ukraine. That was a classic Russian thing, Putin versus Obama, because they knew that conservatives who hated Obama, they could be like, oh, isn't Putin better? And because things are so crazy with tribalism, they know that some people would be inclined to actually believe that. Unholy war, canceling Ukrainian Christians in Kyiv. This is, looking at this, I'm stunned by this. Like the ordering of this. So I searched Russia or whatever. So if you go to their YouTube channel, it's not like this shows all of what they produced. But look at the consistency in the theme there. Clearly biased towards Russia. Passionately making the case for Christian Russia as the leader of the Christian world. The force on earth, not America, not Ukraine, not the West, but Russia is who Catholics are obliged to support. That is subversive. That's not just a throwaway opinion. Like, this is a concerted effort. Now let's go to the last one, and then I'll go to questions. And again, guys, super chats are welcome. They help out. If you want to make a donation, I do have a nonprofit. If you want to make a tax-deductible donation, go to ryanmauro.com. The dollar challenge of every podcast. If you value this, if you spent some of your time and got at least entertainment and found this interesting, and you want to continue, ask yourself, not just do I like this content, do I actually care enough? Do I want to be a part of it? Because it's one thing to appreciate content, and everybody says that they want to be part of a cause, they believe in something. Most of the time, they don't mean it. I'm asking you to show that you mean it by at least a $1 tax-deductible donation. And that means if you write off on your taxes, it's less than $1. And if you can't get yourself to find less than $1 to donate for this work to continue that no one else is doing, then you should question your sincerity when you claim to care about the cause and wanting to make a difference. It's different to be entertained by talking about it. It's different to find it interesting. It's different to consume content about it than to say you care about the purpose of it. So I challenge people, ryanmauro.com, if you can help us out. There's so many leads I got from people that I can't pursue. And I really want to continue doing this. I don't know if I can as I go through a job transition, income transitions here. I don't know what limitations are going to be imposed on my time and content, depending on how it goes. So I'm just praying that there's a miracle and I'm able to continue doing this, ideally able to be independent so that I don't have to be subject to the tribalism that has enabled all of these problems to foster and develop over the years. So thank you for your support. Now here's the smoking gun.
I'll throw my 2 cents in.
Yes, please.
I want you to donate because I like hanging out.
Oh, thank you.
I like hanging out because I get to learn, and I get to keep Ryan in the tribalism a little bit because I am very partisan. So I get to, I'm his devil on one side. So, but no,
that's true.
Donate because, this is fun. I've learned a ton since starting to do this and listening to Ryan, and Ryan knows how I feel about his work. And I just think it's incredibly important. And, this is even coming from someone when he gives me something that I just don't want to read because it completely negates one of the things that I believed on the conservative side. But it's important work. Someone has to be objective. Someone has to be down the middle. Someone has to be brave enough to piss everybody off. Because if you're pissing everybody off, then you're doing the right thing. Your work is good if you have everybody getting angry at you. So this is important. Dollar challenge is big. If you're watching right now, definitely go to ryanmauro.com. And if you can leave a super chat and you want a question answered, go for it. But yeah, I like hanging out. So
yeah, thank you for that, Alex.
Make sure Ryan can do that.
Again, everybody, tune into his podcast because we love Alex. He's an asset. He keeps me sane. I can never do all this brain work and dot connecting my brain while handling all this. And he's also just a good dude. And he's a great resource for me, by the way, which you guys won't see on air because like you're not privy to our private conversations when you share notes and thoughts with me. But just like you saw when you pointed out the humanist thing, the Marxist element of the ideology being espoused by George Farmer and therefore Candace, you would have missed out on that. And that was a pretty damn important thing. So my success is Alex's success, and make sure you go check out his podcast for more of that. Now let's end on this smoking guns here. So what did we go over today? we've unveiled, we talked about before the prior podcast, Russia's Tsarist Christianity offensive. Candace possibly moving there, even if she doesn't, it kind of doesn't matter. It's part of the apparatus. We established that. I showed how it's one and the same with the Iranian regime's operations, which are pro-Candace, and they've even put a traditionalist Catholic anti-Semite in her orbit. Yes, Candace Owens has someone directly connected to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard's covert operations in her orbit. Yes, it is that dramatic. Yes, we found that. Yes, I came out on our podcast. Then we followed that trail. We said, all right, we know Russia wants to build an alliance between the pro-Russia Orthodox and the pro-Russia Catholics. Here's the pro-Russia Catholic that appears in her orbit. What else is going on there? Because the Orthodox are, largely, we know on the Orthodox side, just the Russian Orthodox Church is leading that. Well, then what's Russia doing with the traditionalist Catholics? It's got to be more than just that one Iran-linked guy in her orbit, right? And so then we follow the George Farmer path, and now it all makes sense. Candace makes sense. The alignment between what she's saying and Russia's overall strategy. How much did we learn about Russia's strategy through this and their messaging, what's going to appear in the churches? Because just like the Wahhabists before 9/11 put their ideology in the mosques, and then one day everyone woke up and said, oh my God, this has been going on for how long? The same thing's going to be happening with the churches. It's happening now. They're infiltrating the communities, and they're going to try to pervert the preaching on social media and in the pews, and you're going to have to contend with this in your community. So we found all this out, and now what are we building up to? We looked at what George was saying, analyzed it. Now we have found the connector, the organization that is giving him the platform through, we now know, is also essentially a distributor of Russian propaganda aimed at churches. And this group operates in the United States, influencing, targeting Catholics, trying to undermine the Vatican, trying to undermine the Pope. And this one just, this is a smoking gun. Those series of pro-Russia, anti-Western videos by the Remnant was arguably a smoking gun. This is even stronger. And if you look into the guy who leads it, I think he might have gone to Russia. I'm not sure if he actually went there. I think he did go there. But you see a very consistent pro-Russia line. And so here is something from their website. They're praising Russia for being pro-life. Which, by the way, the reason they're doing that is because their economy needs it. And they need soldiers because everyone's dying in their stupid, evil wars. Maybe they genuinely, but maybe Putin and the Tsars Christians genuinely believe in it. But I know that the conversation about this was because of the population crisis many, many years ago. Like this conversation started. And then it became a pro-life thing. It wasn't like, oh, pro-life, so do this. It was, we have to solve the population decline. What do we do? And then this followed. But look at this last part of the Remnant comment. Oh, go back up. I'm sorry, Alex. All right. What is going on here? He talks about, all right, so look at the title of that channel, or the YouTube video. So it goes from praising Russia for being pro-life. Then it attacks the Vatican. The Vatican's plan to cancel Catholicism. So there are other parts of the website that say they're not like enemies. They're loyal opposition is BS. Because if you're accusing the Vatican of canceling Catholicism, that's not loyal opposition. You're calling them essentially the Antichrist, your biggest enemy, the people doing the worst. That's the worst thing you can accuse them of. Oh, yeah, the Vatican trying to cancel Catholicism, but you're the loyal opposition? No. So, and then look at the comment in between. This puts it all together. I can't believe this is on our website. What's going on there? As America falls further, Russia's pro-life, but as America falls further into the pit of depravity, godlessness, baby killing, and the destruction of the family, the quote-unquote evil empire, that's what Reagan called the Soviet Union. That's not even just Russia. That's the Soviet Union. The evil empire is rising up as the last best hope of the world. They're touting that's even crazier than the pro-Russia propagandists that are just promoting Russia as the Holy Russian Empire and having a czar. It's saying the Soviet Union's coming back, and that's a wonderful thing because America is so horrible and godless, even though the rate of church attendance and religious practice in Russia is among the least in the major countries. Ukraine is way more devout, way more into practicing Christianity than them. So this shows that they're at the very least not objective, and they're buying Russian propaganda, if not lying. But this is what appears in Russian state propaganda. It's at that level. Like that. That's not just narrative laundering. That's not just agreeing. That's the same word usage, same argument, say the same way. In the most, it matches the most dramatic expressions of Russian propaganda aimed at Christians, and then it's paired with this attack on the Vatican, which fits right in with the true Roman Empire ideology, the Third Roman Empire or whatever, being based out of Moscow that Russia teaches is supposed to happen. That the true seat of Christianity is supposed to be in Moscow, and therefore you'd have the Orthodoxy, but also the true leaders of the Catholics and operating out of the same place. And Russia would own Christianity and craft it as they want. So this is truly subversive.
So
and I was nervous about this because I've seen, I know a lot of Catholics are my friends. Like the remnant isn't just like, this isn't just a really fringe. This is a group with reach. This matters. It's not weird bloggers. Go ahead.
Question for you specifically. Have you seen any of this type of Russian propaganda ramping up since the Pope has announced to be an American? Has it been worse since we've gotten an American Pope, since that is a kind of a direct shot at what they see, because it's incredibly Western, right? He's from Chicago. So have you seen more of it ramping up with that as a factor in terms of going at the Vatican harder than they typically did? Or is it just par for the course, go at the Vatican, that's what they do?
I haven't seen an increase, but I'm not terribly confident in claiming that's the case because I haven't mapped out the entire network yet. I'm bringing the audience along the evidence trail with me, and we just led to this group. Now we know, me and all you guys out there, all you researchers, now you know, you monitor that group. Let's see who's funding them. Let's see who associates with them. Let's see the guest speakers. I saw one of their guest speakers is a priest who became famous in 2018. Somehow everything keeps coming back in 2018 and in these influence ops where he alleged that there was a scandal, probably true, I don't know, whatever, and then becomes loyal to the Russian government and then becomes a frequent guest speaker with the remnant, which makes me question, was he originally amplified? Like when did he become pro-Russia? Because that was a massive attack on the Vatican when he alleged that there was this huge scandal, and maybe there actually was, I haven't looked into it, but he becomes famous as a whistleblower, immediately becomes pro-Russia, teams up with these guys, and then other people like Dugin and I was going to save this for another one, Steve Bannon, start citing him as an authority for their own anti-Vatican cause. You see the parallels and everything that we're talking about, whether it's the Brigitte Macron, all these conspiracy theories, how they spring up and the same people embrace them. And then it ultimately leads to today is really remarkable. In the year 2018 is so interesting because that's the same year, I believe it's 2018. I left this out, so it's either 2018 or 2019. I think it's 2018 when Dugin had a secret 8-hour meeting in Rome with Steve Bannon about Bannon's plans to boost the far right and conservative parts of political parties in Europe, which, I get it. Some people support them, but just it seems that with these issues with political parties, there's always some good and there's always some bad. And they basically want to radicalize the right in Europe, but the objective was to take on the Vatican and undermine the Pope. And what's so amazing is that was an 8-hour meeting that both Steve Bannon and Dugin kept strictly private, didn't tell anybody. Bannon, a few years later, then tells someone a little bit about it, but you don't know what he didn't tell. And then before that and after that, Dugin and Bannon, I can't believe on the part of Steve Bannon, especially considering how big he was, how influential was saying Dugin was one of the most important and best geopolitical thinkers on earth. And Steve Bannon led Breitbart. He led Trump's successful presidential campaign, and then he was the chief White House advisor. I forget his exact title before he got fired, and Trump called him Sloppy Steve. But but then he's a major media figure now, though, with Bannon's War Room. So you can see why I'm so passionate about this, because why I say it's not just about Candace. I'm using Candace as the focal point for understanding the influence operation, because once we lay that out, you're going to see where everyone else falls into it. And everything, all the weirdness, all the radicalism, all the anti-Semitism that you see is all going to start making sense. So instead of me just going on and on, let's, are there any super chats or questions or anything, Alex, you wanted me to tackle?
So we have one super chat right here. It's I believe our last one of the night, but Zoe Patty coming in with the 1999 saying thank you. And I just want to say thank you,
thank
Zoe
you.
Patty.
Thank you.
You're the cog that keeps us going. So thank you very much. We appreciate it. But generally, we've just had a lot of really good comments. The chat's fantastic, both coming from YouTube and X. A lot of just comments, just adding to the conversation more than anything. Not many direct questions, but thank you for the chat. Thank you for everything.
I was worried this was going to be too in the weeds, which is part of why I left so much off to the side, because this is no one's talked about this network, and our podcast has not yet. So it's a lot to take in, but I hope people see, I guess what I'm trying to do is show that there's an infrastructure and a coordinated system, not just, oh, this person's connected to here, but that you have a Russia-aligned traditionalist Catholic platform already established that then was used to boost up George Farmer, who Russia at the same time is more directly boosting up. Like see how it's all working together like one assembly line. The degree of coordination and stuff. That's how you see it as an operation, as opposed to people sharing bad ideas, acting fully independently. Like this is a system with buttons that are being pushed. Even if it's happening socially, it's still an infrastructure. It's still an infrastructure. It's still a system, and it's important to understand that so that you see how serious of a threat it is. But that also means it can be dismantled.
So I also think that people are coming to you for the esoteric and for the in the weeds. So I don't know how afraid you're gonna have to be about getting into the weeds with our group that is here and constantly coming to hang out weekly, because I do think people are coming to you for this type of stuff because they know you're the best in the business at breaking this type of stuff down, and you're good at articulating it too, and that helps. It's one thing to be able to do it, it's another thing to be able to explain it in generally layman terms, and you're doing a really good job of that. I think.
Thank you.
I think everybody
Alex.
appreciates what you're doing.
Thanks. Thank you so much, and I look forward to everyone's comments. The last thing is, as I mentioned on either the last week's podcast or one before that, I am trying to assemble volunteers. I need help from people who are good managers, people who are system thinkers that know how to organize people and workflows, and especially people that know just a little bit about AI or any type of platforms that help with organizing tons of tasks. Because as you can see, there's lots of leads here, and I get overwhelmed because I'll be in a bunch of group chats, and every single data point someone finds, everyone puts in there. And then for me to put it together, I have to stitch it all. But then by the time I stitch it all together, there's another 20 that I have to figure out where they fit. And I never get anywhere. And as a result, I have tons of stories, tons of news to break, like stuff that would be on Fox News and Glenn Beck's show. That's off to the side because I just need someone who can, if you enjoy the content and reading it, and then you have a talent for organizing it, so it's not like a task for you, like as part of you enjoying the material, you organize it to understand it better. And you have an idea of what apps or how to manage that, so that this isn't just like one giant group chat where everything related to Russia gets thrown into. In some efficient way, I could really use your help. If anyone has experience with fundraising for nonprofits or think about not just what your talent is, but people you know. Because there are so many, I've been in the nonprofit sector my whole career. There are so many ones that don't deserve big donor money, and I have no idea how they get it. And yet I'm here, and I know I'm doing stuff that no one else is doing, and that's impactful because people in the government act on my information historically throughout. Like, I can point you to the results, so I know no one else is doing it. But I don't know. I'm good at fundraising when I'm put in front of an audience and I explain what I do and what's needed. But I don't have the donor network itself. So employers would like having me fundraise for them, but that doesn't mean I have the donor network. And I keep seeing all these nonprofits that do, frankly, like less or stuff that is not as impactful. And then I look at their forms and I'm like, they raised $2 million. And I'm like, I just need to raise enough just to like get by, just to afford like a microphone upgrade and like these really basic things to pay for some AI subscriptions and things like that.
But 2 million would be helpful.
I would not turn it down.
We're not going to scoff at 2 million.
Yeah. So I know the nonprofit sector is huge. I feel embarrassed and stupid over the fact that I don't know how to raise like any like I just don't know how people have the donor networks, how they access it, how they make all that happen. So if anybody knows anyone that can help with that, that believes in the cause, not just donors, but people that know how that industry works. Because the one thing I know is that some people like they travel all the time and they cultivate people through these fake friendships. All right, some of them are real. I shouldn't say fake friends. Some of them are fake. But the objective is to raise money, and it goes on for years. And like I know these fundraisers who are like traveling day and night, and it's like, well, I don't have the time for that. So how does someone start so that you become self-sufficient is kind of the big question mark. So if you know anyone who can have insight, I would much appreciate learning from them. And just in general, you guys, everybody has value. So if you care about the cause in some way, you can help, whether it's a contact, whether it's a donation, a skill set, time. Time is a financial donation. I mean, what we can do is just a little bit of time because there's so many. How many times, Alex, do I have like a task that is, I feel embarrassed to ask you to help me with, but if it doesn't get done, everything falls apart. Like that, you know, there's so many times like that. So if you're looking to get involved in the cause, there's a bunch of different ways. And I just ask that as you guys are going about your lives, you just think, I know I'm meant to make a difference. How can I do it? And maybe Ryan's show, The Counteroffensive or the Mauro Institute is the place where I can make a difference. And I have an idea. So
and I'll tell you this too. If you're passionate, helping out Ryan now is a big thing, because if you help out, you do what you can. This isn't a situation where Ryan's going to pay for your life, but as you help out, as you do more, as Ryan grows, there could be an opportunity down the road. Yeah. If you're helpful, if you're good at researching, good at fundraising, good at just being extra hands and doing all the little things, this is the time to put the work in. This is the time to help, because the country is in a weird direction, but the country's always in a weird direction. Okay. Throughout history, we're never, countries are shaky as it is. Nation states are always shaky, but this is the time to try and steer it in the right way and to keep steering it in the right way and to kind of expose and put light on the bad actors, whether it's right or left. And, Ryan's the guy to do the research to get it out there. And he's brave enough to come out and do it, because this takes a lot of bravery for him to put his face and his name onto the things that he's saying, because he's not going at other petty squabbles like this. Like Ryan said, this isn't about Candace. This isn't about George Farmer. This is about Russia. This is about Iran. This is about China. This is about major geopolitical enemies of our country that are trying to do things to influence the common person, to basically helping them from the inside. They're using social media, they're using Candace, they're using George to make all of us that fall for it their agents in their own way. So doing the little things like helping Ryan out now, making sure that he has the resources and hopefully gets a surplus of resources so that he can then go on and employ other researchers, and he can go on and expand this show and make it more professional, where we could do certain things that we can't do right now. So that's the importance of this, is not just about going after Candace. Candace is a microcosm. She is a small little cog in the giant machine that is the global seditionist movement. So that's the importance of, if you believe in the cause and you want to help, helping in any way you can right now will lead to big benefit later, possibly not for yourself as well, but for the country. Like you want to make an impact, this is the way to do it right here. So yeah, that is my plea.
Yeah, thank you so much, because I'm a big geek when it comes to solutions, but you don't see it on a podcast because I'm not in a position to make those solutions happen. But I don't talk about it's called The Counteroffensive because I'm obsessed with beating these guys. As much as I talk about researching them, I put twice as much thought into how to beat them. And without sounding too braggadocious, I've been doing this since I was a kid. So I had a lot of things I've seen work and things that don't. I'm confident that I know how to beat these guys. I know how to beat these networks. I know how to beat them geopolitically. Like, it doesn't mean I have all the answers. Other people have good answers. But can I put together proposals if I had the resources and the access to fight them domestically, internationally, on all these fronts? You bet your ass I could. So that's why it's the counteroffensive, and why I said after Charlie was martyred, I said that's it. I said now it's a counteroffensive. We're not just going to cry. We're not just going to take a defensive approach. We're going to end you. This isn't it. We're going to acknowledge that the global seditionist movement is a thing. It's an enemy. It's not that hard to beat if you know how to do it. And it's just a matter of when we're going to do it. And I'm obsessed with achieving it.
I think this is an interesting comment right here before we get out of here. So Vexline, I don't know if there's someone that likes the SSPX, but they say no, SSPX would have nothing to do with her. She'd be rebuked for her public behavior by whatever chapel attended. I don't know if the fruit that we've seen right now bears that. If the embracing of Candace Owens by places like RT, her husband by the Remnant, who obviously, I don't know if she would be rebuked, because in the end, places like Russia, China, Iran, any of our major enemies would love to use a Candace Owens, would love to have them, because they will use her and then they will toss her aside when they are done with her. So, while you might have insight in terms of a normal person, if a normal person that doesn't have the profile that Candace has was doing the same things, making videos and saying the same thing she is, yeah, possibly SSPX would be like, get out of here. She's high profile, whether we like it or not. And any of those high profile influential people they can get, they're going to. I don't know if you have any more.
And she might donate too. Like based on the corruption I've seen in the nonprofit sector, which is far sickening than I ever anticipated. I could easily see a lot of it just being driven by that. But I'll end on two comments from Zopatty, because this is so encouraging for me. Like, I appreciate compliments like anyone, but when you can show me you really get what I'm trying to say, and I'm going to screenshot this because it helps me, because this is so important. Zopatty gets it. She goes, so the true revival we all saw after the Charlie death was a threat to what George Farmer is speaking about. That's it. And then she goes, that true revival immediately after Charlie's death had to be crushed. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. That's why I say when Erica Kirk spoke about forgiveness, and I believe represent Christ in such an amazing way, but also if you're not a believer, patriotically, just as a good human being, she knocked out of the park at a time when so many people forget how we were at a crossroads, and our enemies thought like that all believe we're going to rip ourselves apart, thought we were there. Like they were just, it's happening. Someone's going to retaliate.
She didn't cry. What are you talking about? She didn't cry. That obviously means that she was plotting with them. She didn't cry. They didn't have a cry circle. Don't you know that if she doesn't cry, then that means that she's an evil witch?
I'm going to transition to becoming a woman just so I can smack Candace Owens one day for saying things like that and it being socially acceptable.
Imagine if she did cry, though, right? Imagine if she did cry. Candace's vector would have been, this is what's going to lead.
She can't handle the position.
This is why women shouldn't be in power, because women are too emotional. Erica was in a lose-lose. But yeah, no, I just had to.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. It's the true revival. So I'm just gonna say it one more time, just so everybody really gets it. So you can also see how these are enemy movements. It's not all like just happening randomly.
Yeah.
Zopatty wrote, so the true revival we all saw after the Charlie death was a threat to what George Farmer is speaking about. Yes, that's why all of our enemies amplified Candace immediately after and said, all right, Candace is that we got to strike back, because for the first time in my career, usually what the enemy propagandists do, Russia and China, all of them, they comment on everything, but they lie about it, or they swarm it with additional falsehoods so that if they have to report on it objectively, they can spin it. First time in my career, I saw them and their satanic influence flee. Like, it was just like the Bible says, when it says, oh, you speak the name of Christ, Satan flees. That was the first time I vividly actually saw that happen, where they all just shut up. They didn't lie. They tried to ignore it and make it go away. They fled in the digital ecosystems where they spew out their propaganda. When Erica did that, and they backed off. We're just like, we just got to talk about, be silent for now, and then talk about other things. And then Candace rose up, and then they, not long after that, and the other conspiracy theorists, and then they amplify them because exactly what Zopati said. Because the true revival we all saw after Charlie's death was a threat to what George Farmer, Russia, Iran, all of them, Dugin, were talking about, and that true revival immediately after Charlie's death had to be crushed.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
That's why I launched on Glenn Beck, when Glenn Beck was guest hosting Charlie's show. I released a report about George Soros funding extremists that then led to Trump, because Glenn Beck gave it to Trump, it led to the official Justice Department investigation of the Soros network, which had never happened before in history. That happened because on the 1 week after Charlie's martyrdom, I was on Charlie's show. Glenn was guest hosting it. I released that report. Glenn gave it to Trump, and then the investigation of Soros launched. That was the best way I knew how to honor Charlie, and fight back against this attack on civil society, because it wasn't just an attack on Charlie. It was an attack on civil society. And I said, this is the launching of the counteroffensive. Don't view this just as activism and research. This is a counteroffensive. And that's why I named the podcast this, The Counteroffensive. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And I look forward to any type of feedback that you guys can give. I'll be reading all of your comments over the next day or two. And hopefully next Thursday evening, will be the next episode of The Counteroffensive. That's the plan. But if I'm going down a certain research trail and I need more time, there's always the possibility that we have to skip a week. But my intention is, I'm going to do everything I can to make this a weekly thing. So hopefully I'll be talking to all of you guys next Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard, and we're going to further expose this network and rip it apart. Thanks for tuning in. And you can follow me on social media. Click like, subscribe. RyanMauro.com if you want to make a tax-deductible donation or sign up for my newsletter, and all that good stuff. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Good night, y'all.